Welcome to the Mindset Nebula, where we discuss all things design, technology, and SAP. My name's Ethan Jewett, and I'm here with John Bragg. Say hi, John.
Hi, Ethan. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. How about you?
Doing well.
We've got Paru Sankar.
Hello, very happy to be back again.
Thanks for coming back. And we've got, let's see if I get this, Robb oh no, I did it wrong. Neuenschwander.
You did it, or you did it right, and I've been doing it wrong all these years, right?
No. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Is this the first time on the Mindset Nebula, Robb?
This is my inaugural voyage, so happy to be here, guys. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
We'll have some good questions for him then.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. So yeah, we pulled a few colleagues here from Mindset together for our sort of Sapphire preview episode. This will probably be coming out right after the global keynote, which is happening on the 2nd. So we can kind of give our predictions, talk about what we're looking forward to with Sapphire, and then it'll all get just destroyed by the keynote. I'm sure that we'll have a totally different point of view. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how close we get here. So let's jump in. I thought we could kind of start off by talking maybe a little bit about some of the pluses and minuses of a virtual event. It's virtual Sapphire again this year. Robb, what do you think about virtual versus the in-person Sapphire experience?
Yeah, so I haven't actually been for a few years to Sapphire, so I'm really interested to see my experience with it. And what I anticipate is a lot of the things that I didn't appreciate about a ginormous event held over acres and acres of class and vendor showcase area was just difficult to get around, juggling the different sessions and wanting to see things that are in different wings of different buildings at the same time, and having to budget your time in ways that aren't appreciated, and then ending up in a session that doesn't turn out to be maybe as valuable as you were hoping it might be, and wishing you had gone to one of the other ones. I anticipate that having a virtual ability to jump in and out will certainly be an advantage in that case, and really kind of tailor maybe more towards finding the most valuable information. So I'm anxious about that. Certainly the visuals and being able to see the information will be better when it's on, a big monitor right in front of my face rather than sitting in the back of one of those rooms. So that'll be helpful. I will miss the networking, that, the in-person networking that happens at these events, and seeing people that I've worked with in various stops in my career, and catching up with them, and meeting new people, and better understanding what they're doing on the platform. So that part, I'm sure, will be watered down quite a bit from what it is. That's just a richer part of the scene. So those are all relatively obvious. But I'm certainly eager for the kind of the learning and the experience of it, and hopefully it'll be a lot of good information that we can digest.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Other thoughts on the virtual versus the in-person events, pluses and minuses? I know I'm going to definitely miss the networking piece, which is, I think, where I usually spend most of my time at those events, I'm sure.
I'll come back with a lot fewer stress balls and pens than before previously.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
It won't be as lucrative.
The swag is always missing.
That's right.
Right. Actually, Robb, what you just told me struck me as very interesting, because I was trying to schedule my sessions for this year, the ones I want to watch. And just as I was picking out interesting ones, it kicked me out of the earlier interesting ones I had registered for, just because there was a conflict of the time, right? So I had to go back to my favorites and find back all those ones, and then really think about which ones. So the danger of going virtual is also there are very many sessions you want to attend at the same time, but you can't register to. So hopefully that gets going. but nevertheless, I think the best part about having virtual thing is that distance of walking and walking and walking over the place will be reduced, and that be so maybe we can catch more sessions. However, I will still miss the networking part. I will miss meeting friends that I haven't met for so many years and found back on the floor. And another thing I will miss is certainly there are many things that I found out and learned just because it was right in front of my eyes. Here I have to go looking for what I'm interested in, but there are many things that I may not be interested knowing about that I would be interested in, and just by chance learn about something, right? So that's the part I think I will miss a lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
found that serendipity of just kind of walking around the little booths on the show floor for all the products, and finding the one where there was a product owner that was looking bored and no one was talking to them, so you can go over and really learn about it from the person who built it and knows it that was a very valuable aspect of
Yeah, that part was really good. Do you know, do they have any of those sessions that they're making available electronically that you can pop in and do that? I haven't seen it on the website.
I didn't really see them on the schedule exactly, but I'm sure there's some analogous type of thing.
Yeah, I'd be curious if there's
similar
like a
to-
virtual site that you can jump into for different products and different product owners. I know as you were talking there, Paru, I was remembering the last in-person Sapphire. They also held the customer experience forum the same days as Sapphire, but it was in a totally separate building. So not only are you walking around, the Sapphire floors, that if you want to go to any other sessions or in the customer experience space, which I did, you had to take like a tunnel and a bridge and an overview to a whole separate building across the highway. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to make it back in time for for other SAP partners, there's what's called booth time. So you're supposed to be in the booth when you sign up to be in the booth. And I was like, man, I'm never going to make it back for this. So it's definitely a lot of walking around. It'll be a lot easier to click on a video link to go to a session versus walk around. But I remember each Sapphire I run into, just walking around, run into a person I worked with, like 10, 15 years ago that I didn't expect to see at Sapphire. And that was probably one of the coolest things, just to catch up with old colleagues and see what they're up to and see how everybody's career has gone over the way. So that will definitely be missed by me as well.
It was my healthiest time, John, to your reference about walking around, the
Yeah.
most number of
Where are you
steps
gonna-
during the year,
Where are you
Built
gonna
in
get your
exercise.
steps now? You're just like, well, I didn't move all day. I got 112 steps.
Right.
Glued to the sessions.
Yeah. I think we used to even have a Sapphire group of people who just met at Sapphire most of the time and still connected to that group of very closely knit mentors and consultants and so on are often my, let's say, think tank whom I can go back to and check how are their projects doing and learn a little more about their projects and so on. So that external exposure was invaluable.
Yeah,
Soon,
definitely.
right? Let's hope soon we get back to something like that.
Next year in Orlando.
Mhm.
Although
Yeah.
I gotta say the switching between buildings and that kind of thing in Orlando, sometimes you would just end up being wet. It
It's
was,
just rough.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe we can find a better location from a weather perspective.
Or maybe not to have lunch, like also a building over or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the most difficult part was when you enter the elevator to go to Sapphire, and I used to typically have a lot of customer meetings and booth duty, right? So you enter the elevator and it's full of kids, families who are going to Disney World, and you are there in your suit and formal dress, and it's such a big contrast. So
The temptation just to follow them.
Like,
the
wait,
other
here.
thing, the other thing we're gonna miss is all the in the vendor showcase area, all the enormous volume of blinking, ringing bells and lights and everything for felt like about a half a mile as you went through all that. That certainly is a visual and audio element that's gonna be missing.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and on the subject of blinking lights, I thought it would be fun to just read through the whole session list and note down the most common buzzwords that I saw in the sessions this year. It's sort of like a little sport I have at Sapphire of going around and seeing, you know, what the big words are. Yeah, it was kind of interesting this year. There are a lot of old faithfuls, I would say. You've got your, I can go through some of them, but you've got your intelligent and agile, and a lot of accelerate sessions, how you can accelerate this or that, which is pretty normal. The customer experience is definitely still big this year. Resilience was a really big one this year. I'm guessing probably because of the change in working style over the last year. And then of course, BTP, the business technology platform. I always want to say transformation still, but the business technology platform and Rise. Were there any other sort of themes or buzzwords, if we want to call them that you all noticed and or are seeing as important for this year's Sapphire?
So before we answer that, I'm curious, Ethan, how long you've done this, because you must have had a field day when the Leonardo marketing term came out the year for the cloud platform.
Yeah. It's not my, you know, it used to be something that kind of annoyed me, I think, and so now I've really embraced it, and now I just
now I just want to know what words they use. That's actually awesome. I took a more cynical approach. I think probably like you in the beginning, and Leonardo really struck me on that one, because that was the first time I really thought, like, wow, SAP's marketing team is like the best in the business on, you know, being able to pull off a global Sapphire, to market things right on time, to have big announcements, to make sure that a lot of the products are held until then. And you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of upkeep on that. And I know Paru's laughing because he's like, yeah, that's they came up with that the night before.
So there's something out of a Dilbert there, right? I mean, the marketing people out promising and marketing this massive new capability that's coming in, and engineers kind of scratching their head saying, yeah, we're almost there. You just see it.
Yeah,
I wonder how many
number of time-
sessions. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ethan,
No, go ahead.
you kind of listed out all those buzzwords. I was thinking, I wonder how many sessions don't actually mention BTP. When I was looking through the list, they find their way to weave it into just about every topic of conversation that they present in one way or the other.
Yeah, I was mostly focusing on the titles, and there are a lot of titles that don't mention BTP. But then once you get into the abstracts, yeah, it's there for pretty much all of them. It's, you know, I mean, as we all know, the definition of BTP is expansive, right? And
yep.
It's not only cloud; it includes a lot of on-premise sort of components, and so most customers of SAP are running some part of the BTP stack in some way. So they can kind of work it into everything.
Yep.
I think there were a lot of the more interesting sessions on the topic were certainly more cloud-based, more about how to accelerate your journey to the cloud, and how SAP, of course, hopes that they can help you with that. And I mean, I think I find that a lot of the lessons from those types of discussions can be universal. So whether or not you're interested in actually buying BTP, it's going to be a relatively similar approach a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on which angle you are looking into the sessions from, because typically I went into a lot of the LOB related sessions, and there was hardly any BTP, right? It was mostly S/4HANA Cloud or one of the other cloud applications like Ariba and SuccessFactors. So I think yeah, and in those sessions, one thing that always stood out was experience. I mean, even for the non-success factors part. So there is always one keyword you can all find in whichever session. And interestingly, a lot of the application-related sessions also had BTP, mainly on, I think, because of the touch point with the intelligent enterprise, which then touches on the integration side. And as well, what was surprising for me is I couldn't find so much on business process management as much as I expected to, considering the RISE. So it could be that it's folded into the RISE announcements.
That's what I was thinking. They'd probably bury it in there as one of the capabilities of the platform, and you'll hear plenty about it. But there's a lot else in that story, so it could probably get drowned out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was curious, Paru, did you see business transformation as a wording in a lot of those functional sessions, or no, not really?
Not really.
Yeah.
It's all about experience. There are some with that. So Rob, go ahead.
I just saw it. I had actually written down in one of the abstracts I saw when they were talking about RISE, they described how it offers business transformation as a service.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I had to laugh a little bit. I'm like, that's a marketing engine in overdrive there, man. Business transformation as a service. That's good.
Sounds awesome. Let's do that.
So
I think,
so transformation was not on my list, and I didn't think that it was a big one this year. Any other ones that are missing?
But you had digital transformation on your list.
That's true, but not the business transformation.
That's right.
There was a lot of digital. There was a lot of digital and digital transformation. Rob, you're better at reading my own list than I am. I shouldn't have shared that document. But no, yeah. So what else is missing? I know that 2 years ago it was all about the sort of Qualtrics CX type of stuff, and there's still a lot of discussion of customer experience, and there's a certain amount of Qualtrics that's involved with that's showing up in some of these discussions. Maybe the whole CX 2 years ago at Sapphire, the whole CX conference being separate was sort of a premonition of the upcoming reverse acquisition, divestiture. I don't know what it's called, but which worked out pretty well for SAP in the end. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so customer experience. I mean, whether or not Qualtrics is actually directly part of the conference and the offering, it's certainly still a big topic that SAP is focused on. I didn't see a lot of Fiori.
I didn't either.
Not there at all this year.
Yeah, it was noticeably muted from all the abstracts that I was looking at, which was interesting to me. And it's obviously still a big part of their strategy, but because it's so embedded within S4 and some of the other offerings, I think it just doesn't capture the same amount of attention, and there's clearly a lot of focus on BTP and RISE as complementary pieces to the S4 strategy. So I think that maybe that's why it's there, but I noticed the same thing. I did not see a lot of mention of it.
It's become electricity, like so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like mobile,
has it just become,
right? It's an expectation,
part of what is expected, right? It's not. Maybe they've sort of won the war of pushing out Fiori into all the products, and now it's just kind of the SAP design, the SAP look and feel.
Yeah.
The other keyword I think that is that I would have expected to see more of, but it's still there, is the sustainability, because the whole of last year, that is what the management was talking about, climate and sustainability. So I was surprised to see not so much of a hype around it. So
interestingly, I went to so the Global Partner Summit day was earlier, and a couple of the BTP sessions, they did focus on sustainability, like this is how we want to go forward, this is how we want to use these things, but it wasn't an overall session call out, it wasn't a focus, it was just like, oh yeah, this is part of BTP and how we want to run in the future, kind of a bit of a side note. So yeah, it was interesting to see more of it as a little bit of a muted focus there as well. coming back to your point, Ethan, on customer experience and CXM, I've always been curious, like not just for this Sapphire, but long term in the Qualtrics play. Obviously, that was more of a Bill McDermott CEO type decision that going into Qualtrics, and that was only a couple of years there. But I always expected more in the actual S4 space on customer experience versus them really focusing more on success factors and CRM and CXM and a lot of the cloud sales tools that they offer. That's where most of the integrations lie. And I've always been surprised, since it's customer experience to them is, yes, an end customer to their customers, but truly for the software of SAP, their customers are end users. And they don't really focus on the end user piece or people that are using S4, especially in that Qualtrics kind of CXM space.
The one area where I saw a couple of abstracts that were talking about this, where it was in the context of AI and personalization being embedded capabilities in S4, and those being some of the maybe the newer capabilities in the platform to drive a more personalized, richer customer experience, was really kind of the gist of the abstract. But they led with it more as an AI and a personalization play.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another area that I tend to look for at more at TechEd, but definitely in Sapphire, is the SAP runs SAP sort of sessions, because I'm really always curious about how SAP uses its own software. I think that especially for the sort of S4 on-premise, all that kind of software, SAP is the best in the business at running that stuff. And SAP's customers could learn a lot from the way SAP does things internally. And so, so I always want to see those sessions. I think, most of them this year look like they're actually about cloud software and a lot of success factors and that kind of thing, which is great. There is one session around the finance transformation that SAP is going through internally with S4 that looked really potentially very interesting. And so there's always a lot those sessions tend to always be very information rich, and there's a lot to learn there. So that's definitely one that I'm looking forward to, but I wanted to see more of them. And I didn't see a ton. So fingers crossed for TechEd.
Similarly, I always enjoy the the customer stories and kind of the journeys that they've undertaken with their implementation of their products. The marketing hype is interesting to listen to, but you often have to pick through what's real and what's maybe a little more vapor or future promise. The customer sessions, they're generally optimistic because they're presenting it at Sapphire, and they're kind of coming through the the presentation channel and seeing what's there. But you get a little bit more of the story, like this is kind of what we had in mind, and here's some of the kind of some of the sacrifices we may have had to make, or here's where it was harder than we thought it was going to be, or where the promise maybe didn't come full circle to what we were expecting. And I think those types of sessions are always really valuable to me in terms of thinking about, okay, how do we really think about approaching this with some of our customers, and where can we provide value added experience and advice to them based on kind of the lumps and hard knocks that other customers have had.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to miss the most, because I think I took a lot of really good sessions from customers to see, where, based on exactly what you said, Rob, where is the marketing hype, and then where is the actual market? What are the customers going through today versus what maybe 2 years later for or longer for customers to actually get into some of those environments. Like when we talk about BTP, S4, RISE, we're having these conversations with our customers, but a lot of them, to be honest, still aren't on S4. A lot of them are, a lot of them aren't. So it's kind of that how far is the market behind what SAP is coming out with right now? And that was always really, really interesting to me in Sapphire, at least.
Yeah, and I think that is where also the partner sessions are extremely interesting, because they bring very different customer stories out instead of just one dimensional. One thing that I always did miss at Sapphire is a kind of panel discussion of different customers coming together typically happen during keynotes, but there were not enough of that happening in the individual tracks. And I haven't seen, again, over here, those kind of ones where a panel of customers come together to discuss their experiences on certain topics. So that is something I would certainly wish to see in future Sapphire. The part that I also think this time at Sapphire, in comparison to last Sapphires, is I see more of the bigger partners sessions, but not so many of boutique partner sessions. So this is something also interesting, because bigger partners have a very different, let's say, a mass perspective of things, whereas boutique partners typically tend to have very hands-on related experiences. I mean, this is where that group of mentors that I used to meet up with brought to the table, because those were really hands-on experiences, right? So I will miss that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of the partner sessions were definitely the very large ones this year. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, we talked a bit about topics, but maybe we can talk about the main topics that we're kind of thinking that SAP might hit on in their keynotes and throughout the conference. So I know that we kind of at Mindset, we put together a list of a few topics that we thought were going to be really key. What does our esteemed panel here think as far as the main topics for Sapphire? We already talked about BTP, of course. What else will we see?
Rise.
I feel like we know a few there. Yeah, my big question is Rise going to be number one, or is BTP going to be number one? I feel like Rise is the business BTP version. Yeah, I think they might lead with Rise, and then say BTP enables Rise because of the business transformation as a service platform. I don't know.
Yeah, I would guess that's correct, especially for Sapphire. I don't think that they are leading with technology anymore, so to speak. So I don't know that BTP is going to be the sort of
yeah. That's a really good point, Ethan. When you think about the core audience, Sapphire versus Tech Ed, right? I mean, they're just completely different groups, and it has a different feel and a different tone and tenor to everything that's kind of presented there. And the executive buyer, the person at the top of the house who's working and signing the big contracts with SAP, are the ones that are thinking about things like, how am I going to make this work with the cloud vendor? How am I going to stagger my procurement? How am I going to balance these things? And how do I get a simpler plan around that I can understand and that I can bring through my executive teams. And that's really what they're trying to hit on with Rise. And so if there's ever an audience that you want to hammer that home, it's the one that we're going to see at Sapphire. So I agree with you. I think that's going to be kind of the headliner. And certainly there will be no lack of discussion of the business technology platform, but Rise will be a pretty big topic. And also because I think there still is, in general, a fair amount of confusion about what it all is and how it all works. And so, if they're paying attention, which again, they're shrewd marketers, I'm sure they are, they've heard the stories that this is still somewhat cloudy for people, and maybe they need to take the opportunity to continue to work their way through the murkiness to help people understand it better.
Wasn't the pun that I expected to see coming, not Rise, that it's cloudy.
It's cloudy.
It was a good one. That was a good one.
Gosh, I wish I had written that down.
Is there a chance of meatballs anywhere there? No.
Lunch could be good at Sapphire this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, Paru, did you have a topic?
Yeah, as I said, rice would be my assumption as well. Also,
Yeah.
because there are so many of the topics that were clubbed under rice, right? I mean, almost all of SAP is now a part of the rice. So that is one aspect. And then the second one that I would think about is the whole intelligent enterprise, and again, how that spans out. And I think that hasn't died yet, though it's been there now. I think it's the third or fourth Sapphire where it will be there. So from that perspective, still very valid. And also the cloudy part of how it touches the intelligent enterprise, that definition has changed a little bit after RISE was announced. So that clarification of what does that actually mean is also very important for everybody to hear. There are several things that many customers find out at Sapphire, and this is a really good time to showcase the clarity around that, because when RISE was announced, clarity was missing, and there has been enough time to work on that.
Yeah, another kind of core constituency around Sapphire is the partners and the partner conference. And I do wonder if SAP's, they've been sort of adjusting the RISE message and structure while working with their partners over the last 6 months. And I wonder if they'll be taking that opportunity to kind of really roll out a more clear vision of how that's going to work for everybody. And some of those conversations will be difficult, and some of them will be welcome. But I think everybody's still looking for a lot of clarity there as well in the partner network.
And Ethan, I wonder whether the lack of presence of the smaller partners are also a result of that, right? If you look into the RISE, who has worked on the RISE, it has mostly been the big partners who have worked on the RISE or has been closer to RISE. So from that, whereas when S4HANA Cloud was announced, it was a lot of boutique partners that were taken on to kind of get used to the S4HANA Cloud and to spread the message on S4HANA Cloud. So there is a shift in what has happened when the public cloud was announced, and now when RISE was announced, it's a completely different target group from a partner perspective. And I think that is also where it will be a kind of pity if they don't pull all the partners along, because one of the strengths of SAP has always been the partner network and what the partner network bring to the customers as well. And that's something SAP should keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. I think one thing I heard too in the partner day was a little bit more detail around RISE and how they're going to start to go to market in the very specific lines of business. So having more of that detail within each industry, within each area that they want to focus in with RISE, as they go through their quote unquote, like they talked about business transformation as a service, which is more of that business process intelligence, some of the tools that they use for migrations, and then finally get into S4. Coming up that curve of getting people into that is best practice line of business processes and seeing how that works and how that plays out. So I expect that with RISE being one of the main topics, a lot of those breakouts from product owners will be very line of business focused. I remember in previous Sapphires, when S4 came out, I do remember a lot of the, like you said, Ethan, you find a product owner that was a little bit less busy than others, and you go in and talk to them. I found a lot of the line of business folks that were there from either, whether it was automotive or rail or stuff like that. They weren't that busy 2 or 3 years ago, and I think now they're really starting to dive into, look, let's really deep dive into this industry, see their pain, see their points, and try to bring that in with RISE, along with, of course, BTP as a go-to-market platform.
Yeah, and
I think this is also driven out of the industry cloud initiative that SAP started 1.5 years back, also in conjunction with intelligent enterprise, and now it kind of comes together with the RISE. So that will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and that's a good differentiation play for SAP. vis-a-vis some of the other, kind of the heavyweight hyperscalers and their capabilities, which, ultimately SAP is competing against to some degree. But, for some of the services on the clouds, even though there's a coexistence play there. But the more that those industry specific solutions that SAP is leading can bring their way forward in those cloud properties, I think that gives them a stronger selling proposition.
For sure.
I think one very interesting thing I saw for the first time in my life, because I am now logging in from India, I get to see Asia Pacific sessions directly. And that was related to mid-market. Most of the sessions have the tag mid-market. So that is another aspect I would be interested to see what RISE comes up with, whether RISE figures at all in those sessions on mid-market. And there are a lot of initiatives that SAP came up with basically to help people set up own change management trainings and so on that might be relevant for the mid-market. So I'm very curious to dive more into the mid-market sessions to see exactly how it will be positioned.
And actually, when you think about it, RISE might be, potentially more attractive to some of those mid-market players because they don't already have maybe a massive cloud strategy that's driving other parts of their enterprise and they're in, a vendor management organization that's already, optimizing the spend on that. And so the consolidated play that RISE brings together would potentially offer a more attractive offering for some of those size companies.
Yeah.
Hey, Ethan. There was a topic I know that you expressed some interest in, and I'm actually eager to hear a little bit more about it. Do you want to talk a bit about collaborative documentation and what you're looking to see there?
Yeah, I'm excited. So I mean, it always takes forever for things to change, but yeah, I mean, Yelena, the regular Yelena on this podcast, and I've been talking a little bit about what's happening around documentation and around learning and certification with SAP. It does seem like there's kind of a bit of an opening coming maybe, and more of Learning Hub becoming available outside of the firewall, so to speak. Last TechEd, there was a sort of a free version of Learning Hub that was available for attendees, and I'm kind of curious if something like that might happen for Sapphire as well, but maybe more focused on business applications and that kind of thing. We'll see, I guess. There's the collaborative documentation piece that you talked about, Rob, that I am really, really excited about. SAP, if for people who've used SAP documentation before, it has a very nice user experience where with a hierarchical folder setup. I don't know. It's like it works. It's very dense. It is oftentimes out of date and difficult to get changed, I guess I would say. So SAP over the past 5 years or so has been introducing feedback mechanisms and that kind of thing. But, in the rest of the industry, the way that documentation is done now is that the documentation is maintained in public repositories where you can actually kind of see how it's being built a lot of the time. So if you go look at a lot of Microsoft documentation, they've got Git repositories that hold the docs, and you can go in and suggest changes and see how it's being changed in real time. And SAP is trying this now. So the Business Application Studio documentation now, if you go to help.sap.com, in addition to the old feedback link, it's also got a edit this documentation link, and it's not a wiki, it's actually a link to GitHub. And you can fork the repository and create a pull request to actually update the documentation, and somebody will review it and merge that in if it's a good addition to the doc. So that's really cool. I think it's great to be able to do that, and I'm really hopeful that it's a successful initiative. I think that the structure of the documentation is better already, and hopefully it gets rolled out to more products.
Yeah, awesome. It's cool to see some of the technologies that, open source technologies have a lot of utility, and as organizations like SAP start to embrace them internally and see the value, and as their customers are embracing them within their environment in different ways, it starts to make its way into core product features like that, because they just see it. This is a really smart way of doing that, and people obviously understand the paradigm and can kind of get their arms around it and see value in being part of that, maybe that crowdsourcing of improvement for what is otherwise, I would assume, a pretty laborious effort to keep documentation like that updated.
Yeah, it's actually
You
an
can
interesting. Sorry, it's actually interesting how it has made it so that the documentation update cycle is so much faster than it used to be. So I would talk with SAP product teams and talk to them about, well, this part of the documentation, it's not right. Like this this actually isn't how it works, or this used to be how it works, but it's changed. And it would you could just feel the pain, right? About how long and how much effort it would take to update documentation. And now it's as easy as just going and editing a text file.
Fix it, Ethan. Stop complaining about it. Just fix it.
That's what they've been wanting to tell me for a decade, and now they finally can. Leave me alone.
Self-service.
I mean, there is so much of knowledge of SAP outside of SAP, right? So this is actually a brilliant way to capture that. And no, I think as Ethan said, now they will be able to tell him, don't complain, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, it brings to mind some of the old and still current, actually, product wikis on the SAP community websites, which were so much more thorough and so much more useful than the actual product documentation, that it was, I mean, kind of crazy. And a lot of those were actually maintained by SAP employees. And they did it there because they could actually do it there, and they couldn't do it in the documentation system. And so hopefully this will be leading to a kind of convergence of that sort of stuff.
I think the one thing SAP might have to look through is standard versus non-standard, right? There's a lot of information out there that could be built in customer projects differently than the standard. So filtering through that and keeping that quality check will be extremely important, because otherwise it might give rise to wrong expectations of the product. So
yeah, sure. All right. So I think this is a good point at which to talk about last thoughts before we sign off for the for this Sapphire preview episode. So who's going to go first with the last thought about what's coming up at Sapphire? Could be different. Could be a summary.
Well, I'll go first. Again, I'm super eager to experience it again. As much as I'm disappointed it's not in person. Like I said, it's been a few years, and actually the last time I went there, I think I was doing a bunch of presentations, and so I didn't get to fully immerse myself in it as much as I'm able to now. What I'll be looking for is how can I pick through what people are actually doing with some of these technologies today, and I'm really hopeful that I can find either some customer use cases, or even if SAP is able to help shed some light on what's real and what's being used, and that's where I think I'll get a lot of value out of better understanding BTP and RISE and some of the other emerging technologies, is by finding those corners of use cases that help me understand where it is and what's happening with it today, so we can do something practically with it.
I think what is amazing for me with the virtual conference is the reach. I can just send it to the whole team and they can attend. And that is a great experience for everybody who's working on the customer projects, and a huge learning experience. That wouldn't be there if we had the physical one. So I think at any point when the physical one comes back, I would still like to see most of the sessions online. Even for me later, if I'm there physically, I would still love to go back and see those sessions in between, right? So I think this is a big asset that shouldn't be taken away. That is one aspect. And the second aspect is really to look into the Twitter world and the social media, and to really hear the opinion leaders say whatever, or whoever it is who is listening into a session, say whatever they think about the session. Because a lot of times that is where I've got the most value from, even while I am at Sapphire, to follow the Twitter and see what are people telling about my products, what are people telling about my lines of businesses, and so on. And this is where I think the real nugget lies. So hopefully that will be there very strongly this year.
Paru, just piling on to your first comment there, think of how much money organizations like ours and others are saving with attending virtually like this, right? I mean, it was an expensive endeavor to send somebody down there, and the time away from the office, the getting on the plane, the hotel, the conference fees, all of that is, not something we need to worry about this year.
And Rob, even for the SAP people, we were vying to be there to learn from the customers, right? So even the SAP people get to listen to all these sessions as well, even if they are not there. So that's great.
John?
Yeah, I think a couple of things for me. Just our talk here has spawned, I think, 3 probably full-length podcasts on their own. One to talk through BTP. My biggest thing on some of those things is, you always coming into Sapphire, you always have to wonder how real is everything, and where do those gaps lie, and how we use this coming out of Sapphire. So there's always very big announcements, and in us as a partner, we're always looking for, okay, how can we use it? How can we make sure our customers know about it? How can they implement it? So those are big things that are still yet to come, of course, as Sapphire comes up. But as we wrap up kind of the pre-session here, it's a lot about just more questions for me on are they going to really go to town on explaining RISE, explaining where BTP comes into play? Are they going to talk about actual S4? Are they even going to mention the words on-premise with S4? Or are we just into hyperscalers now and nothing else? So there's a lot of those just random topics as we talk through things. Just more questions start to come up of, will they cover X, Y, and Z from the SAP side? But yeah, I think obviously the Mindset Nebula will be podcasting during the week as well, and we'll have a lot of topics to cover, and we're gonna try to do our best to cover a lot of things.
Yeah, should stay tuned to this channel, so to speak. Yeah, and I think for me, it's my kind of hope, a little bit different from what we talked about, is to hear more about the nuts and bolts of the promise of RISE around making adoption easier and migration easier and the move to the cloud easier. I really want to hear about how all of these applications from SAP work together seamlessly, and how extension works easily, whether that's using tools like Kaima or even non-SAP tools. But so where are all those like APIs and stuff like that? I'm a techie, so I want to hear that nuts and bolts type stuff, but I also want to hear the story and the commitment from SAP around all of that. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because a lot of products come to play, but you don't always see where everything's intertwined.
Yeah.
So as John, sorry.
I think it would be interesting to see how many sessions we need to attend to understand those intertwinings. So
I'm just going to go read that collaborative documentation.
Nice.
So as John said, we will be continuing to podcast throughout the week of Sapphire. So you can see that here, and we'll have blogs on the mindsetconsulting.com website that are giving some recaps of different topics at Sapphire. And then we'll hope to see everybody online at Sapphire, on sessions and on Twitter. And I don't know, are they doing message boards? BBSs or something like that? I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. I know we'll be doing there's like booth hours for all partners and things like that, where you can actually come in and chat to people live if you have questions on different things. So feel free to visit us there as well. A lot of us same folks will be in that room as well if there's any questions too.
That's right. So we'll hope to see everybody there. All right. Well, let's sign off. So we want to say bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a
Bye.
great Labor Day weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.